So Juan was like, as long as the girls aren't wearing matching outfits, I think we can get through this. 1 year later, it's the Married at First Sight reunion, and everybody's gathered together with our host Kevin Frazier. Camille is like, hey, she's happy to be back with this dysfunctional family. They all still talk with each other. They have like their own little group chats, separate group chats for separate people, I guess. Don't know the full context, but it makes sense. But they're all really happy to reunite. Everyone's still talking except for Michelle, David, and Madison. But everybody seems to be good as we start off the reunion. Thanks to Camille and Thomas for holding the season down, is what it said. They're now in their new place. They've been married for a year. They are still together. That is awesome. Happy 40th to Michelle. She's been dating here and there, hanging out with her friends. Life is good. MM and Brandon are on their first year anniversary. And at first I was like, they've been married for a year. No, they're still together. They're still engaged. They're still in their engagement season for 1 year, but they're still together. They have their ups and downs, but things are going strong. Ikechi continues to create, but at this time he's not disclosing his dating status. Juan and Carla are actually close friends, and they're hanging out just like Juan wanted in the first place. I guess she gave in. He probably just kept bothering her and pestering her until she had to give in, but maybe he offered her some help, some advice, and so that might be why she opened that door back up. I don't know. We'll talk to them later, I guess, in part 2 of this reunion, because now I see we have a part 2 coming. Not sure if that was needed. I think we could have got everything in one, but you know how they do. They stretch it out as far as they can stretch it. Juan is actually in a relationship right now, and Carla's kind of dating. Alan was actually set up with a matchmaker the day before the show, and I think he went out with that person that he was set up with, and but the show called him, so he's like, you know what, I have to take this opportunity. But after things ended on the show, he got back into it with this person, and things are really working out well, so that's awesome for him. David and Madison, they actually living together. They purchased a house. I think he said it was an investment property, so I'm not sure if they're living in that house, but we know that they're living together. It's their 1 year anniversary as well. They're very happy, and Madison says he's the best. Cut to Michelle, eye roll. So we can see Michelle still kind of bitter. So the questions fly about them, David and Madison, like, when did you guys start this situation? Again, they stick to their story about the third weekend they were in the gym, and Madison says, well, he just was opening up to her, being heartfelt, and they just kept talking, and that's what opened her up to wanting to be with him. He showed his soft side to her, and, they know that they'll always be there for each other. But David does admit that since the honeymoon, he was kind of checking out Madison, thinking, what if? So early on, he had his eye on Madison. He said he struggled during the marriage. He reached out to his family and friends, and, they were kind of disappointed at his behavior. I may have put that down later on, but yeah, they were disappointed at his behavior. I got notes. But he reached out to his family and friends and everybody for advice. And then Alan jumps into confrontation mode. And he's like, well, you reached out to your family and friends. What made you guys decide to reach out to somebody else's spouse? Or what made you decide that? And then he said, it really hurt me because we were friends. I considered you to be a friend to me. And you basically played me like a fool. I defended you as not being that type of person, not knowing that you were with my wife. So yeah, they did make him look like a fool. As a man, he said, I should have stood up and told you the truth, but I had to shoot my shot. So, David basically said, he said that before. He threw his friendship with Alan under the bus to get the girl. And I know people do that, men and women. They'll throw you under the bus to get with somebody. That's not really a true friend, but I mean, you don't have to throw the person under the bus. You can still go for that person, but be respectful. I've heard stories all the time where people go to their friend and say, well, I'm actually interested in this person. And their friend is like, sometimes it's a bad confrontation, but sometimes the person knows, you know what, we're not working out, so go ahead. So there's a way to do and pursue without being that guy, but David had to be that guy and shoot his shot in secret. They talk about the food story, one of the highlights of the season, the whole food story about the text. And Michelle's like, nobody talks to their food like that, you know, and after that, it was just lie after lie after lie, and she had to get to the bottom of what was going on. Then they show an unseen clip of Madison saying, you know, why is Michelle bringing me into this when she was going through her whole investigative stages? Madison is replying to this, saying, why am I being brought into this? She's grasping for straws. Why won't she talk to me off camera? She's 38. She needs to be more mature. I'm not involved in this. Keep your name out my mouth. She said all of these things knowing that she had feelings. She caught feelings for this man. And she was like totally being false. She was totally lying to the producers at this stage. Then Madison starts her babe battle again. I'm like, the word babe didn't come out, but it's like, Madison, now that you've been shown to be corrupt, now you want to start fighting when it's your fault. She's one of those people. She's like, I'm not trying to rehash everything, but hey, let's just let it burn. Let's put it all out there at this point. You know, what do we have to lose? I think that somebody said, did you ever think to say anything? And to her, like off camera, and Michelle's like, well, no, this is a reality TV show. This is what it is, you know. And Madison's like, I was ashamed that I said all that stuff I did say. And that's not the version of me. That's not the real version of me in that clip. That's not really me. Nice cop out, ma'am. But yeah, I appreciate the fact that Michelle wants to give us some good TV. And honestly, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to put everything out there on tape. All these hidden secret backdoor things that you guys are doing. We're supposed to see that. That's supposed to be part of the show. But hey, as long as we can go back and use them and show them later and some secrets can come out, I mean, it's still worth using. But we rather see it on tape than somebody saying, oh, well, we did this on the side, we hid this. Hey, we want to see it all. It's a reality show. This is what we're here for. And I think they're insinuating Michelle, that's what she was there for. And maybe on some level she was, but at least she seemed to keep it 100 the whole time, and she was not fake, she was not false and playing two sides and lying like, you know, the super couple over there, David and Madison. And we're asked, why did you guys write it out for 8 weeks, the whole 8 weeks, or at least try to? When you knew you had feelings for each other, you could have done that. And they were like, well, why did Michelle and Alan write it out? And Michelle's like, well, I know that Alan really did give all he had to the process, you know, and I think Michelle was just trying to do her obligation, her contractual obligation, to see this through to the end of the show. I don't think she was ever hopeful, and she does say, you know, she wasn't really ever hopeful because she was pretty much done with David after he revealed that he lived in his parents' basement. So there was more back and forth with David and Madison at some point says she'll just be quiet and everybody's opinion, you know, they're welcome to their opinion, but I'm just gonna stop at this point. Another thing that, you know, they were asking, well, how often did you guys talk? They said basically we talked every day. That's something that you should have been doing with your husband. Okay, so when she went out all the time, She was with friends almost every single night, except the time when he did say Alan assumed Madison was a transactional type of girl. That comment, caught her off guard. And she did call her friend Amanda, and then she did talk to David. MM said she was shocked that David would even do this. Carla said there was plenty of opportunities to tell the truth while the girls were hanging out. The girls hung out a lot. They had their girl talk. Madison could have fully disclosed something or disclosed a little, gave somebody a little hint of what was going on with her, but she didn't. She didn't take those opportunities. Thomas felt bad that he defended the so-called enemy, and Camille said this was really a sticky situation. To me, it seems like everybody is really still good with David and Madison except Michelle. I'm kind of surprised the whole forgiveness factor is there. Like, I didn't hear much from Carla, but they said that they all still talk. Camille and Madison are kind of close, so that was something that I wasn't expecting either. And I may say that again later in my notes. And I'm sure they're still on some level on David's side, but I don't see why I wouldn't be. Akechi said, actually, I saw it from day one that those two had a connection because he went into the gym. He saw David doing cardio. I guess he was surprised. David was just doing different things and moving in a different way, he said. And he said he didn't think it was intentional, but things were just happening and the connection was just happening. He said, really, y'all love each other, so that's all that matters in the end. Agree but disagree. It's all in how you do that. Madison says she regrets not being courageous, but doesn't regret falling in love with David. David re-apologizes to everyone again, and MM notices, hey, you guys are wearing rings, and they say, well, no, there's just promise rings, and Juan was there. He witnessed us get our promise rings. Like, Juan was like cheering them on. I'm kind of disappointed with all the cheer for them. Like, I understand still being amicable, but to just be like kind of rooting for them, I'm still not there. I'm fresh off of seeing the latest episodes. They've had a year to like think about this and mull it over, so I guess it's easier for them. It's been a year, but during that year process, they have decided to, seems like, in a way, let David and Madison off the hook on some level. So now they separate, they do couple by couple, which I think is fun and introspective. Thomas and Camille first, because everything worked out well with them. They're kind of the ones you would go to first because you want to get the messy couples later on so we can keep watching. So we do the happy couples first. They had actually went to London. I assume that was like another, I wouldn't say, maybe it was like a year later, so maybe that was like a celebration for them being married for a year. They talked about the swag. It was like a lot of, and the black stereotypes that we have about how black people should be, and how she kind of leveled him up and made him more swaggable and brought out the best in him as a man. And I agree with that. I feel like basically with each couple, they're going to kind of rehash their story and then gonna get to see where they are now. I think that the host, he says this is kind of therapeutic, kind of getting your full closure, and it kind of is. I feel like even during when he's talking to them, the questions he's asking is even more introspective than it is when the experts talk to them. But I know it's probably different because at this point you have got time to sit with your thoughts and think about what you've done and all of that and everything that's happened. So I could see taking some time and then going back and saying, oh, I see all these things that I didn't see in the moment. And Kevin points out, hey, the intimacy seemed pretty easy for you. Like, yeah, We did it in a way where we did slow down. We didn't base everything off the intimacy. We took it slower than, I guess, most. And they were respectful with each other, but they do feel that's an important part of marriage. They were open to each other's needs. And she finally showed that lingerie. At first, he's like, yeah, was it a myth? Was it even real in the first place? And again, as I predicted, she wanted to make sure he was going to be there for the long haul. So he finally got to see it. He finally was rewarded after everything they went through. Consistency, loyalty, determination, conflict resolution. These are all things that are a part of their marriage, just making their marriage work. So again, these are great tips for people that are thinking of getting married and maybe newlyweds, and maybe people that have been married for a while. Some things that you can think about that you may need to work on and grow in your marriage: consistency, loyalty, determination, conflict resolution. That consistency piece is what I feel like is missing in a lot of my relationships. People aren't consistent and they aren't loyal. They're probably more loyal to themselves than they are to the other person. We got to be loyal to each other. And then Thomas agrees. He says the most important thing is consistency, and I agree. They talk about babies in the future. Of course, that's something that they want. They have good family relationships with each other's family. The age gap, is that an issue, was asked, and he said, well, Camille is so mature, I really don't feel that there's a big gap. But they're like, well, when you do have kids, Thomas, you're going to be doing the walker chasing the kids on the walker. A little LOL moment. And the most surprising thing of Thomas, she said he's silly, his silly and goofy side, well, she kind of told us that previously. Then they show never before seen clip. We got a few of them, which I'm digging. Where they were at a baby class, a parenthood class, where they had the fake baby and they had to, do all the exercise for us feeding, swaddling, and all of that. And Thomas was struggling, and he was trying to swaddle the baby, and the way he had his knee like on the baby, I guess it was by mistake, but he was trying to really wrap and swaddle this baby, and he had his knee on the baby. So that was like a crazy moment. Camille does want to be a mom. She feels like that's one of the things that she was made to do in life. And Thomas says he agrees and says that's what he feels like, that's a part of his life journey, and that he would like to pass down what he has learned so that his child can be in a good environment and become even better and a better person than he is, as his father had done for him. And then they talk about the babies. They're like, well, they didn't really have a timeline. And Kevin's like, well, babies are usually going to come by surprise. You guys may try to plan this and say we want to do it in a certain length of time. But usually, for most people, babies come at a surprise, and it doesn't really matter what you planned. All right, next up, Akechi and MM. We see a never before seen clip. This is like during the honeymoon, and they're talking about getting to know each other. They're going to get to know each other before they know each other. And at that time, Ike seemed hopeful, and MM, they both seemed hopeful and just more connected. And, they were sitting close together. It's just a scene that you didn't see too much after the honeymoon. And that's when she said, things started to fall apart. When they went to Chicago, everything was all surface. There was no more depth to their relationship. And Akechi admits that he was stubborn. And, they are two types of learners, science versus art. So he admitted that. I was actually surprised and happy that he admitted some things. And I guess it took a year for him to see what type of person that he was being, and to reflect and to accept. And maybe he did have to see himself back on camera, back on the tapes, to see, really kind of how messy he was being. Now, when he said she was a little aggressive when they met up with the friends and family, he said he did not mean that. He meant that she was a boss black woman. He did not mean it in a negative way, the aggressiveness. And he was really saying it was a miscommunication, because he really meant that she was like a go-getter. But she said, as a black woman business owner, it felt like a dig against her, calling her aggressive. And the way it played out, it did seem kind of negative, the way he was framing it. And even with the edits, I still say I felt a negative vibe to that. And maybe it was because he was intimidated on some level, though he was trying to be positive. I think it was could have been a bit of both. um well, he directly said he asked for Michelle Obama, and I was actually dating someone that actually said I was their Michelle Obama, but it didn't play out that way, the way things ended up. So I think Michelle Obama's kind of like her name is a trigger for me just a little bit, because I don't know if it's like a really high standard to live up to. People put that on you, and that was put on me. And I don't know if I lived up to it or didn't live up to it, but I just feel like a little bit scarred by that relationship. So whenever I think about being compared to her, I don't want to be compared to her. But I do have to say, when it comes to Michelle Obama, she wasn't, I think she's a boss. She worked with her husband, but at some point she stepped back, and Barack was great. She let Barack be great, and he was a much more of a help and support to her. She was emotional. She was allowed to step back and be a woman and be feminine, but she had her moments of being a boss at the same time. So I just like her story. I like that she is not just one dimensional. She's not just a boss, but she was feminine. She stepped back. She had to step back. But when she did, she had a good man to step forward and be there and supportive and not put her down or belittle her. It was definitely a partnership with those two. So if you want a Michelle, you got to be a Barack at the end of the day. That's how it's supposed to work. She was asked, do you intimidate men? She says, yes, men are intimidated. Dating is hard because I am a black woman business owner doing well, being successful. Men have belittled her. They've had passive aggressive behaviors, and they've made her feel small. And Akechi said, I never intended to do that. Then they go to the clip where he said he felt like a piece of meat, the whole consent situation. And he says they were never at a level for intimacy, while she says there were mixed signals being shared. And so then he said, well, why no intimacy? Why were you going hot and cold and all of this? And she said basically that's what he was doing. He would go hot and go cold. And, he asked, why did you just cut her off? And he ended up finally confessing, which I was feeling this earlier in the season. Almost even at the wedding, because even though I felt there was like love and connection between them, there was something off with the way he was acting. I felt like maybe she wasn't his type, but those words were never said. He felt like, as far as what we were seeing, they were having a good time. They were lovey-dovey. They were open, and that something was still off. So I always had a thought that, he said basically he wasn't sexually attracted to her. And they were like, well, why didn't you say it? There's so many things that are being unsaid. Madison never said her truth. David never said their truth, hiding and sneaking in corners. For them, he just wasn't sexually attracted to her. And he said he didn't tell her because he didn't want to embarrass her. She said, well, you still embarrassed me. You were giving mixed signals. And you really embarrassed me with all this shenanigans, basically, at the end of the day. Those aren't her words, but you know what happened. She accepts his apology. She forgives him. And she's kind of let it go. I'm like, yeah, it's been a year. So then they go back to that nothing but the worst clip. And she apologizes that in that moment of how she was feeling. And he said, he doesn't feel any kind of way about it. He knew it wasn't real. He knew she was speaking from a hurt place. And he does admit that he was confusing. But he said he was walking on eggshells, felt disrespected, and he just shut down. But then Kevin was like, did you say anything? He's like, no. So that was the problem. He was never saying what he was feeling. Em said she didn't know or see that she was acting a certain type of way. It was never something that she saw about herself, and he never said anything. So she doesn't know where he's coming from with that. At the end of the day, what did they learn? And Em said she just learned that, love is hard as the other person loves you. Basically, I feel like she said she learned to match energy and not give so much of herself when the person isn't giving in return. She wish she didn't give so much. And not to be more into it than the other person. But she doesn't have that give up spirit. That's just the type of person she is. Facts. That's a good thing. Her new man Brandon, he's ready. Akechi said he's happy for her. He's happy she found love, the best from the worst. Right now, her and Brandon are merging their families. And again, it's asked to Akechi what's the right woman for him, and all he can just say is Michelle Obama. He really needs to say the attributes that she has that he is attracted to. Is it just visual? Like, I know it's more than visual. I think he maybe, when men say, you're my Michelle Obama, or I want you to be like Michelle Obama, that they think that Michelle made Barack great. But Barack was already a great man. She just supported the greatness within him. Again, like I said, if you want a Michelle, you have to be a Barack. But at the after they had their conversation, we felt the closure. I was like glad that Akechi was not catching attitude, while Funny David and Madison were always catching feelings. Akechi was always catching attitude and catching himself, not so much. But she was talking at the back with Michelle, and she said, Michelle was like, I'm surprised that he was good about everything, and he admitted some things and apologized. It wasn't perfect, but he did pretty well. And then was like, yeah, it's done. And like my sentiments exactly, it's done. I'm happy for at this point. I was like not sure if her relationship was gonna last. And I'm glad that they did not get married right off rip. They've been engaged for a year. They're getting time to know and learn each other. So it makes sense. They're progressing, I think, pretty well. Like, it is a fast thing to get engaged right off rip. But if you have a long engagement, you have a quick engagement that takes place quickly, but you have a long engagement, that makes sense. You take time to learn each other. You don't jump right in, then that's a good thing. So I'm hoping that everything goes well with and Brandon, and their relationship continues. For me, on some level, I know that Brandon's gonna, I think, ask the experts. This is in part 2, we talked to the experts. Now that's gonna be interesting. I think that will be a good part of part 2. But I think he asked Pastor Cal to marry him right at the thing, and I'm like, to me, I feel like he's been fishing for views, fishing for his moment in the spotlight just a bit, because he's always doing these big grand gestures in front of the camera. Now, why don't you do some of this off camera? Why don't you marry her off camera? Then I'll know it's real. But why is he trying to do everything on camera? So I'm a bit suspect about that part of his behavior. But we'll see in part 2. Alan and Madison, we talked to them now. And the wedding was great. They talk about the wedding. She said, but after that, she got in her own head. And I could tell because she started pulling away really fast. It looked very promising in the beginning. And even in the honeymoon, but there were some things in the honeymoon where she was like putting him down and saying about his clothes. And I think she said he needed to work out even during the honeymoon, which to me, it was a little soon. But even when they had first got to the honeymoon, she was like not sure. Like, and before, during the wedding day, she was all in. So I don't know if she was putting on a face at the beginning, or maybe she was hopeful, but she did actually say she got in her own head. And I could tell, I was a little surprised she got in her head so quickly, because I was actually hopeful for them too in the beginning. And Alan said, I could tell when she got in her head, I could feel the pullback from her. And so, Madison, did you give it your all? She said, yes, but I was uncomfortable, and I couldn't get past us just being friends. So she friend zoned him very early in the whole relationship. Alan was asked, if she did just focus on you, do you think it would have worked out? He said he thinks things would have been a lot different, but he can't really say. But it would have been a different scenario in some ways. Um, and then I think that Madison mentions, if it was just between them and they were separated from the other couples, there could have been a greater chance. And then Kevin lets everybody know, yeah, in the old days when they first started the show, which was something that I didn't realize, that they didn't have the other couples interacting with each other. They were all kind of isolated and separate, able to build their own bond. And maybe they should go back to that and see if it makes a difference. I like the fact that Madison came up with that. But she said it may have been better for her. She could more fully focus on her relationship with Alan. I don't know, because even if, let's say, they're all living in the same building, if she came across David, she may not have really given him that much of a look. But let's say, again, they're in the same building, all the couples are. She sees him in the gym. And then it still could have happened in that way, even if they weren't put in a social setting, such as hanging out at the honeymoons, hanging out for dinners, going to bars together, but just seeing each other at the gym, that still could have opened that door, if you think about it. Unless they were completely isolated in different areas where there was little chance for them to interact, almost no chance, then maybe not. But if he saw her in the building, I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to shoot his shot, especially the way Michelle was treating him. He probably would have. Does she regret that? She said, again, she doesn't. She regrets her behaviors, but she doesn't regret meeting David. She said he shows grace and chooses, as far as Alan, Alan shows grace and chooses to be a bigger person, so she's really grateful for Alan in this whole situation. Again, she didn't have her big girl panties on when she was 29, and I know being 30 is not gonna be like, I think for some people it's a mindset, because they may put in their mind, when I'm 30, I'm gonna do this. I feel like she was still had a young girl mindset, and she's younger, I believe, than everyone on the cast was. Her and Camille, I think, were closest in age, so she just wasn't there. Now, I most of the time see guys not being there. Most of the time for me, I see women being more mature, but in this case, she just seems like she wasn't there yet. Did she want to tell him? She said, yeah, but she was scared and she didn't have it in her to actually tell the truth. He thought the communication was good. Then it was asked, did you go upstairs and talk to David? I even insinuated that too. Did you guys actually go to each other's apartments, or did you go to his apartment? Well, Michelle's up there again. Like I said, I don't think so. Michelle is like a security. But, I heard that Michelle was going actually to her own home. Maybe she wasn't staying there as often as she was supposed to do for the experiment. So who knows? Again, it would have been kind of tricky to see when she was there, when she wasn't, to try to hang out with David. So it would have been best to just stay away from each other's places. Again, when did this really start between them? This question keeps coming up because everybody's thinking it started probably around the honeymoon. Again, David admitted in his head it kind of started there in his mind. His mind opened up to trying to get with her. Again, she says it's been in gyms in the morning. That's when it started. What caused you to come clean about this, Madison? The confrontations, the Michelle investigative work, that is really what caused her to come clean. Michelle would not give it up. She was Inspector Gadgeting. She was Scooby-Dooing all over the place. So, I'm sure she felt the pressure. And she said, she believes what's going on with her and David is real. Why would she risk everything for this? Because she did kind of think back and say, was it because we're all under this experiment that I, reacted this way and went for David? Is this real? And then she said, well, I wouldn't have risked everything if it didn't have something real to it. So she believes that it is real. She could have been more upfront And Alan was asked, "Is this betrayal?" He's like, "Yeah, it really was a betrayal. After everything wrapped, I was about angry for about a week, but I kind of got through that, probably more than a week." And then Kevin's like, "Well, since you're with someone new, do you think that helps you in this new relationship? Does that help you kind of get over things?" He's like, "Yeah, because it showed me that I was good for somebody, and that was good for me." And he doesn't really want to keep the negativity. "Will you guys be friends in the future?" He's like, "Oh no, we're cool though. We're friends, but not close friends." But when it comes to their relationship, he just says that he wishes him the best. She wishes Alan the best with his relationship, and they're supposed to actually meet each other's people. Of course, we know that he knows David, but she's supposed to meet Alan's person, and everything's supposed to be resolved. For me, I feel like it's taking it a step too far for me. I'm not trying to get you to meet. To me, I think that's kind of a mistake. The Madison's negativity on Alan, and she may say some things and may put some things in this young lady's ear. Not that it would change her mind. It would possibly be a test to see if it would or could. But I feel like there's no need for her to meet Alan's new woman. Like, I don't know if he's going to try to flaunt her. What is the purpose of that? For me, I would just stay separate. We're friends from afar. I'm cool with you guys from afar, but we're not going to be hanging out, and we're definitely not going to be double dating with me and my new person. No, thank you. That's my take on it. But I'm glad that they have resolved things and Alan has moved on. So now the ladies get a moment to chat. Camille is considered the one that gives the best advice. Carla's the life of the party. Madison is the shot queen. And it was a little bit insulting to me because she was like, "Yeah, well, you're going to definitely get drunk with Madison," when Camille said that. But Camille seems like she likes to have a drink or two. She likes to turn up, so maybe that's fun for her. Em and Madison actually see each other a lot. Really? Em and Madison see each other a lot, but is closest to Camille. Em is closest to Camille because they're right around the corner from each other. Was everybody surprised about the engagement? Yes, Michelle says so, as well as Carla. But she feels that she's happy for her, happy to see her smile. So she hopes the best and continued success with their relationship. Em was thankful for the girls for holding her down during her blow-ups when Akechi was doing what he was doing. Carla's thoughts on Camille and Thomas is that she loves their relationship and they accepted each other as they are, and that's really what she's looking for. And the type of man that Carla needs, as well as Michelle, is a man that's gonna step back and let them shine, give them their moment, and step up when they need to. And Michelle needs someone that's going to teach her and allow her to let her walls come down. When Madison was confronted, she did say she appreciated the accountability from the girls. Carla, the incident with Carla and Camille, when they were, making her see her accountability in the situation. Also, when Carla said that Madison and David went off together, Madison was trying to clear the air, saying at that time they really weren't off together like that. He was actually helping her look for her phone, so there was no hanky-panky going on. But again, they were in that flirtatious vibe, so it probably looked some type of way. Something probably looked off. They were trying to see, is the timeline off when it comes to when their relationship started. That's what Michelle was saying. She does feel like it's off, but she says she'll never know the truth. Only the two of them will. And they're there, and something comes up about Madison, and they're like, "Oh, well, it's cool." And they give some fake smiles. I know Carla was giving a smile. I feel like it was fake. They're acting like everything was squashed and cool. And on some level, I think it is, but I still think on the back of people's heads, yeah, Madison is definitely messy, and it's hard to have a friend like that or keep a connection like that. So even though they're all cool, I know that Carla probably has her at arm's length or farther away, because you never know if somebody does that, what will they do to you as a friend? You have to be very wary. All right. Alan and Michelle talk in the back a bit, and Michelle's like, yeah, it's good for you to forgive and let go, but you don't want to be a pushover. But Alan's like, yeah, you don't want to be a pushover, but at some point you have to let go, because this power is basically in letting go of those feelings and not letting that person have control over you with the anger and the resentment and all that. Not exactly his words, but basically that's what he was saying. So I really thought that was a good moment, because again, I do feel like Michelle still has a lot of resentment held up for the situation. But yeah, sometimes you do have to let go. It was beyond you, above you. You did your all. You gave all you could give. Though let's say Michelle probably didn't do that. And she did say she resented the way she reacted to David, but that doesn't really give him the right to be the way that he was in the retaliation, which really was just him falling for someone else. Then, they show David with each other a lot in the backstage. They're kissing, and I'm still on yuck about them. I think I believe they bring all the couples out, or did they just bring David and Michelle? No. I think all the couples may be out at this point, and they keep rehashing certain things. No, I'm sorry. I got it. David and Michelle are brought out at this point. And did he ever wish they had that moment to talk? I think he said yes. He did admit that he really messed up again. He disappointed both his parents. Kevin said you were in that Peter Pan phase while you were in the basement in that Peter Pan phase, and that was a turn off for her. She basically, again, like I said, she said she wished she reacted differently. But David's like, well, with all the rejection and walking on eggshells, he had given up basically after that month anniversary. But I think, was it right before that when the text was sent out anyway? I think I'm right on that. Then they're asked about the timeline again. Can you, David, really clarify this timeline? So is the moment of truth is coming up? Nope, to be continued till next time. So obviously we all have been suspecting something's up with the timeline, but we'll see if they're just putting us on edge or if there really was what we all suspected. But I was thinking about how they keep asking the same question over and over. It kind of makes me think about when you're being interrogated by the police or something. When I watch some of those law and police shows, and they keep asking the same question, one day you're just gonna break. That's kind of what they are doing during this reunion when it comes to David and Madison. And when did you guys actually start this thing? Like, really, it starts to me when you're intimate, but it also starts if you start flirting regularly. Like, if the flirting kind of crosses a line, and if you're married, you're already kind of crossing the line by flirting even a little bit. But when the flirting starts to cross a line, that to me technically is when the cheating started. Then when it gets physical, then that really solidifies the cheating. So emotional cheating starts when you cross that flirtatious line a little bit too far. And the real cheat is when you actually start being physical with each other. Even if it was just a kiss, that's enough for me to say, hey, you guys were cheating. It doesn't have to be going all the way to be considered cheating for me. If you're holding hands and if you hug, to me, that on some level, that's pre-cheating. That's really like on the verge. Why are you holding hands with somebody that's not me? Why are you... I know some people are huggers, but having one of those long, sensuous hugs, that's to me the precursor to cheating. If you stop there, it's bad, but you can go back and you can apologize and you can fix. But if you start kissing, that becomes a little bit too intimate to the point where I feel, it's not going all the way, but it's enough for me to say, hey, you cheated on me. So if you look at what your definition of cheating is, that plays a part as well. So we're going to talk more faith, love, and trends right here. This is Irene. Any thoughts, comments, questions, you guys can always email me at cbiztv@yahoo.com, and we'll be talking more. Talk to you next time. All the best. God bless.